Little Bobcat keeps following Officer for help. When she realizes why, she bursts into tears. One spring morning in California, the air was fresh and the sky was a bright blue. Officer Mary, with many years of experience on the job, was driving her patrol car through a desolate forest area where few people passed by. She was used to driving through these quiet roads every day, but today, everything felt different. Yellow leaves fluttered in the breeze, and the sunlight filtered through the tall trees, casting beautiful rays on the ground. Suddenly, Mary stopped as she saw a small figure appear by the side of the road. A wildcat, but not an ordinary one. It was a small bobcat with golden brown fur and eyes that shone like gems. It looked at Mary with a gaze that wasn't fearful, but rather confused, as if it wanted to say something. Mary felt a bit surprised. This bobcat wasn't like any wildcat she had seen before. It didn't run away, but instead it moved closer, its large eyes seemingly seeking help. Mary looked back through the rearview mirror to make sure she wasn't mistaken. She wondered why a bobcat would appear in this area, a place where they do not usually live. The bobcat continued to approach Mary, showing no signs of fear. She felt it was odd. Bobcats are usually very cautious and would quickly run away when seeing a human. But this one seemed calm, not frantic. It moved slowly, as if trying to approach Mary. Mary decided to get out of the car. She walked closer to the bobcat and gently said, "Hey, little cat, what are you doing here all alone?" But the bobcat stayed still, staring at her without moving. She sensed something very unusual in its eyes, not the usual fear, but a plea for help, as if it was searching for assistance from her. In that moment, Mary felt that something important was happening. She couldn't explain why, but she knew this bobcat wasn't just an ordinary wild animal. Something was making it behave differently, and Mary decided she had to understand more. The feeling of curiosity and worry made her unable to take her eyes off the small cat. The bobcat remained there, staring at her, as though it was waiting for something. Mary felt a strange connection between herself and this animal, a feeling she had never had before. She didn't know why, but she knew she had to do something to help this bobcat. Mary stood still, observing the bobcat with a worried look. It didn't run away, it just stood there, almost waiting. This felt very strange to her. Wild bobcats are usually very cautious of humans and would run off the moment someone appeared. But this bobcat didn't seem to be scared. It stood there, staring at Mary as though it was trying to communicate something. Mary tried to move toward it, but the bobcat still did not move. It just lifted its head, its eyes filled with worry. Mary felt a growing sense of concern. She took a few more steps, still keeping a safe distance. "Little one, what are you doing here all alone?" she whispered, her voice gentle, filled with curiosity. But the bobcat didn't answer. It just swished its tail strangely. Then Mary decided to try a different approach. She crouched down gently, not wanting to scare the bobcat. She reached her hand out, but it still did not move. Mary thought maybe the bobcat was injured or disoriented, but there were no signs that it was in pain or facing any serious issues. The longer she observed, the more Mary felt something was wrong. A healthy bobcat would never stand still for so long, especially when someone approached. She felt as though this bobcat was trying to communicate with her in an unusual way, and this made her feel a strange sensation, as if this animal was not approaching her by accident. The more Mary thought, the more worried she became. Is it abandoned? Or is there something it wants me to understand? The air around her seemed to grow heavier. Then the bobcat took a step closer to Mary. She could feel its breath, but still, she did not dare to get too close, afraid to make it scared. The bobcat sat down, its eyes never leaving Mary. Everything around them seemed to fall silent, only the sound of leaves rustling and the soft breath of the bobcat. It showed no signs of wanting to run away, but seemed to be looking for something. Mary felt as if there was a cry for help in its gaze, a vulnerability that she had never seen in a wild animal before. She couldn't stand still any longer. The feelings of anxiety, curiosity, and sympathy urged her to act. Mary knew she needed to help the bobcat, but she did not know what to do next. She stood there, hesitating, then decided to take the bobcat back to the station for a checkup, though she still could not understand why the bobcat had come to her. Mary decided that she couldn't leave the bobcat alone in the forest, especially when she clearly felt something was wrong. She carefully approached, gently opened her car door, and took out a safety box. The bobcat still sat quietly, watching her as if waiting. Mary crouched down, doing her best not to frighten the animal. She gently extended her hand toward it and slowly lifted it up. The bobcat didn't resist or show any fear. It just looked at her, its gaze still full of worry, as if it knew that Mary was trying to help. This strange feeling made Mary's heart tighten. She gently placed the bobcat into the box and closed the lid. Then, she returned to the car and started driving back to the station. On the way, Mary felt a heavy weight in her chest. She couldn't stop thinking about the bobcat's eyes. There was something very strange about this animal, something that made it stay close and not show any fear of humans. It seemed like it was looking for someone who could help it. Could this bobcat have been abandoned? Or is there something it is facing that I cannot see? Mary wondered to herself. She drove through the empty roads, and as she neared the station, she could not shake the feeling of unease. Her police station was located in a remote area of dense forest where few people passed by. At this moment, she wasn't just a police officer. She was the only one who could help this bobcat. She reminded herself that she had to do everything she could to assist it, even though she was not sure what to do exactly. When the car stopped in front of the station gate, Mary got out. She took the bobcat from the box and gently placed it in a safe area where it could stay temporarily while waiting for wildlife experts to arrive. The bobcat still didn't show any fear. It looked at Mary, and this time, its gaze seemed to be asking her to do something important. Mary sighed, feeling tired but also full of curiosity. I have to figure out what is going on with this bobcat, she thought. The sense that there was a mystery waiting to be solved was becoming clearer. But at that moment, Mary also knew that there was only one way to get to the truth. She had to contact the wildlife experts and hope they could help her decode what had made the bobcat behave this way. While waiting, Mary sat beside the bobcat, unable to take her eyes off it. She felt a strange connection between herself and the animal, and the questions about why the bobcat had come to her kept swirling in her mind. Those questions had no answers, but Mary knew one thing. She would not give up until she found out the truth. When Mary brought the bobcat into the station, she felt the silence in the air. The fluorescent lights lit up the police station, making the space feel cold and still. The bobcat was still lying quietly in the box, its bright eyes never leaving her, making Mary's heart flutter with unease. Mary couldn't stop thinking about what she had just experienced. Why had the bobcat come to her? Was it facing some danger? And what would happen if it was not helped? She placed the box in a corner of the room and took out her phone to call the wildlife experts. However, while waiting for a response, she could not take her eyes off the bobcat. It still looked at her, not showing any fear or panic, but instead, it seemed to be waiting, as if asking her to do something next. Time passed in tension. She could sense the bobcat's anxiety through its eyes and breath. Mary tried to comfort it with gentle words, but she knew there was not much she could do without the experts. She couldn't take the risk of treating it or doing anything that might make the animal more stressed. When a wildlife expert finally called back, Mary explained everything. The expert asked her to keep the bobcat in its current state and wait for them to arrive in a few hours. However, when Mary hung up the phone and turned back to look at the bobcat, an uneasy feeling rose inside her again. This animal wasn't like any bobcat she had ever seen. It didn't react like the wild bobcats. Instead, it seemed very comfortable with the presence of humans, as though it wasn't afraid or shy. This only made Mary feel more confused. When the experts arrived at the station, they brought the necessary tools to check the bobcat's health. However, they were also surprised to see how calm the bobcat was and how easily it interacted with humans. One of the experts said, "Usually, wild bobcats do not act like this. It is possible it is used to humans or has been through something unusual." The expert continued with a careful check, but the bobcat still did not show any fear. On the contrary, it remained very calm, just staring at everyone. Mary couldn't help but wonder what had caused this animal to be so different from any bobcat she had ever encountered. And could it be in real danger? Mary's curiosity couldn't be extinguished. She couldn't explain the strange connection she felt with the bobcat. Had it gone through something unimaginable? And would the things she was about to discover surprise her? The answers were still not there, but one thing was certain: the story of this bobcat would have many more mysteries to unfold. As the wildlife experts began their thorough examination of the bobcat, Mary stood aside, her gaze never leaving the small animal. She couldn't stop thinking about the strange circumstances surrounding this bobcat. Why was it acting this way? Why didn't it run away when it encountered humans and instead came to her like this? One of the experts suddenly stopped her examination and stared intently at the bobcat, her expression full of concern. "Something's not right," she said, her voice lowering. "This bobcat is not just injured, it also shows signs of severe neglect." Mary furrowed her brow. "Neglect? What do you mean?" She couldn't understand why the bobcat would show such signs when it seemed healthy and normal. The expert explained, "This bobcat is not a typical wild animal. It lost its mother at a very early age, possibly when it was just a small cub, and it had to survive in the forest without the protection of its mother. That explains why it is so comfortable around humans. It does not know how to protect itself, and it might have come to humans seeking safety." Mary suddenly realized. She remembered the bobcat's eyes when she first met it, eyes full of worry and weakness, not the gaze of a normal wild animal. She felt a pang of sympathy rise in her chest. What has it been through? How lonely and scared must it have been to seek out a human, she wondered. The expert continued, "Besides the lack of its mother, this bobcat may have encountered a fierce battle with a larger predator. It could have been injured while escaping and is now looking for help." Mary's heart sank. She couldn't imagine the pain and fear the bobcat must have endured. It had lost its mother, faced the harsh challenges of wildlife, and now, when it came to her, all it wanted was to be protected, to be cared for. Looking at the bobcat, Mary felt like she understood more about the loneliness it had gone through. It didn't just need physical care, it needed attention and affection. She couldn't leave it to live alone in the forest, facing dangers without anyone to help. "We will help it," Mary said with determination, her eyes full of certainty. "It has lost the most important thing in its life, and now I will be the one to protect it." But as she looked at the bobcat again, another question popped into her mind. Would her help be enough for the bobcat to overcome the immense pain it had suffered? And could the special connection between her and this bobcat be a sign of something bigger that she had not fully understood yet? All these questions still had no answers, but Mary had made up her mind. She would do everything she could to help this bobcat. When the experts completed their examination and confirmed that the bobcat had lost its mother at an early age, Mary felt an even greater weight in her heart. But there was still one question she couldn't ignore. Why had it come to her? What was so special about this bobcat's behavior? Mary continued sitting beside the bobcat as the experts left, thinking about everything she had just heard. Suddenly, a thought flashed in her mind. Could it sense safety from me? She wondered. But then an uneasy feeling rose again. This bobcat wasn't just looking for protection. Maybe it needed something more. After the experts had left the work area, she sat down in a corner of the room and looked at the bobcat. It was still staring at her, its eyes never leaving her. At that moment, Mary realized something very strange. Unlike other bobcats, this one didn't have the typical cautious or wary reaction to humans. It didn't shrink back when it saw her, but instead seemed to trust her, as though it had known all along that Mary would help it. A question echoed in her mind. Did this bobcat know that she was the only one who could help it? Mary stood up and approached the bobcat, wanting to try and learn more about it. She gently touched its fur, and at that moment, the bobcat raised its head, its large eyes staring directly at her with a look of expectation. Mary felt a strange connection, as though it was not just seeking help, but was also sending a wordless message. The feeling made her shiver. Had the bobcat known from the beginning that she would be the one to help it? Suddenly, a truth that Mary had never considered flashed in her mind. Perhaps this bobcat wasn't just a lost wild animal. It might have been following her for a long time, or sensed that she was someone who could protect it. Why her? How could this bobcat recognize her among the vast forest? Mary began to feel an intense curiosity. Could this be just a coincidence? Or was there a deeper reason why this bobcat trusted her so much? As she sat next to the bobcat, it continued to stare at her, as if waiting for her next move. She gazed into its bright eyes, and in that moment, she felt something she had never considered before. This bobcat knew she would help it. Perhaps it had come to her not just for protection, but for a deeper reason that she could not yet comprehend. While Mary was lost in thought, the bobcat moved closer, as though it wanted to convey something important to her. It let out a soft, gentle meow, making her pause. Is it sensing something special from me? Mary wondered. The strange feeling of connection between her and the bobcat grew clearer. Mary knew she couldn't just stand there and watch this creature without fully understanding why it had come to her. She couldn't just care for it like any other pet. There was a secret waiting to be uncovered. But the one thing she knew for sure was that the bobcat had not come to her by chance. It had its own reasons. As Mary sat beside the bobcat, questions kept swirling in her mind. Why had it sought her out? Was it simply looking for protection, or was there a deeper reason? She couldn't stop herself, partly out of curiosity, partly because she felt a strange connection with the animal. But the more she thought, the more uneasy she became. One late afternoon, as the last rays of sunlight streamed through the police station window, something unexpected happened. The bobcat suddenly stood up and moved toward the window. It stared intently outside, as though watching something. Mary felt a cold sensation, as if someone was watching her. Driven by curiosity, Mary quietly stepped closer to the bobcat. She didn't know what was about to happen, but her unease was growing stronger. Suddenly, the bobcat turned to look at her, its gaze full of determination, as if it wanted to tell her that she needed to do something immediately. Is it showing me something? Mary wondered, full of questions. Then, as if by coincidence, a phone call came in from a strange man. His voice was urgent. Hello, I hear you are caring for a bobcat. I need you to do something immediately. Mary jumped, not understanding how he knew about the bobcat. Who is this? She asked, feeling that something was off. The man continued, Don't ask me why, but the bobcat you are taking care of isn't just any animal. It is the offspring of a special bobcat, a rare bobcat that I and others have been searching for. We have been looking for it for months. Mary couldn't believe what she was hearing. This bobcat is the offspring of a rare bobcat? She still did not fully understand the situation. The man continued, Yes, it has a special ability that we need to protect. If you do not help it immediately, there are bad people who will try to exploit it. It felt like everything suddenly clicked. This bobcat wasn't an ordinary animal. It was connected to a bigger secret that Mary had no idea about. And now she had to decide, could she help it again, or would she have to face unforeseen dangers? Mary stood up, feeling the connection with the bobcat stronger than ever. She knew she couldn't abandon it, no matter what happened. But the man's words kept echoing in her mind. If you do not help it immediately, there are bad people who will try to exploit it. A sense of urgency welled up inside Mary. She looked at the bobcat once again. Its bright eyes seemed to send a message, as if it knew that now was the time to begin a new journey, one not just for it, but for her as well. As a police officer, Mary was used to facing danger, but this time, what she was about to confront could change both her and the bobcat's lives forever. She didn't know what to do next, but one thing was certain. She wouldn't let this bobcat face danger alone. She would protect it, no matter the cost. And so, the story of the small bobcat was no longer just about an animal seeking help, but about a mysterious adventure that Mary was about to embark on. Her life and the bobcat's would never be the same again. Thank you all for watching until the end. If you enjoyed the video, do not forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you never miss out on the best stories. See you in the next one.